everyone. Welcome to day 2 of building an HTML5 RPG game. So last week we took a look at getting the map into our game.
That's right.
We did the Cordova setup, brought in Enchant, the game library that we're using. We displayed the maps. We got the player on the screen. We got player controls going.
Yep, for movement and action.
In action, yes. We got a little bit of animation for the player.
Yep.
We got collision into the game. And we've managed to get a status screen set up.
That's right, status screen. Yeah. So gotta have that in RPG.
Gotta have that in RPG. So for those of you who haven't seen last week's video, pause this one and go watch it right now. And then come back and a little intro to ourselves. My name is Mickey McDonald. I'm a indie game developer and a technical evangelist with Microsoft. So basically I spend a lot of my day talking with other developers, helping them solve any issues they might have, implementing certain platform features, stuff like that. And I get to go around and talk to a lot of conferences and events and, kind of spread the word of everything that we're doing.
It's always fun.
It's always fun. And with me, I have Brian.
Brian Griffiths. I'm a software engineer and a game developer. And I'm also a video game design and development instructor for Trials College. So I get to teach all the crazy fun courses and so on, like calculus and physics and all those fun things that everybody loves, but also game design and level design and other asset curation systems and so on. So
yeah, you've worked on a lot of different systems too.
A lot of different systems, a lot of different companies, publishers. I've worked with most of the major ones at some point in my 15 years of game development now, so getting up there.
Yeah, you got a few shipped AAA titles as well.
That's right, AAA titles on all of the last gen consoles actually as well, and then one coming up on this gen as well.
So full of knowledge.
That's right, full of knowledge. Full of something.
Awesome. So today like I said, we're going to go a little bit further with our RPG. So last week we did the getting started. We did, the installing Cordova, setting up all the templates, stuff like that. We created our project using Enchant, which is an awesome library, as you'll see more of today. We modified the default template. We created the map and player characters.
Yep.
Right, we got all that up and going. As well as we added collision and status screen. So that leaves us with adding an inventory, interacting with NPCs, our battle system.
Which is important.
Yes, can't wait for that. And then we're going to finish it off with, just talking a little bit about polish and how you can extend this game going forward.
Yeah, where to go, what other features you could branch out into. There's tons of things in an RPG game to pick from. So we're just going to sort of classify some easy ones and some moderately hard ones. And
kind of challenge you guys, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Some ones that might, pull out some hair, something like that.
Awesome. All right, so the experience level that we're looking for this is anywhere from beginner to advanced. Basically, we're trying to target developers that maybe have had some experience with JavaScript or any programming language. Really, having basic knowledge of game design and development is going to definitely help with this course, but isn't necessary really. We talk a lot about it throughout the process. So.
Yeah, we do go into some basics as well, but that was all yesterday.
That was all yesterday. So yeah, again, make sure you watch that video.
Right.
And if you're looking for supporting material, I highly recommend the Web Game Developers Cookbook. In fact, that's where a lot of the content for the RPG actually was developed and is really cool. But the one thing about this book, it's kind of set up in recipes, so it's pretty easy to digest little sections, and they have a bunch of different genres in there. Like you got real-time strategy, first-person shooters, puzzle games. So if the RPG theme isn't really your cup of tea, you might want to check out this book and check out a lot of the cool recipes that are in it. Definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, it's a good book.
All right, so I'm assuming that most of you are going to know what the MVA is, considering you're watching an MVA right now. But for a little bit of background, the MVA, Microsoft Virtuals Academy, is a really cool program that's been put together to, basically offer up tutorials and talks on a wide range of topics, like everything, from game development, what you're seeing today, all the way up to doing big data, cloud, Internet of Things. It's actually, it's really amazing, and I use it myself because, a lot of time, just focusing on the game development stuff, I don't get to experience all the other cool tech that people are doing. So one of the ways I kind of keep up on that is digging into the MVA content every once in a while. And while you're watching us, you might as well earn some points for it.
Oh, who doesn't like points?
Yeah, you need points, right? We're gamers. We want achievements, right?
Achievements. Oh, yeah.
So if you visit the website here that's listed, aka.ms/MA MVA-voucher and enter the code DevGamesHTML5 2. You can actually get 50 points right off the bat just for watching us. So make sure you take advantage of that one.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let me scroll through here. Apparently I was in the wrong slide section, so I'll skip ahead. There we go. Okay, so today, like I said, we want to start building out this RPG engine, right? So we've got a lot of the basics in place. And we finished off last week's talk with getting the status screen up and going.
That's right.
So
yep.
we saw all of our stats for our player, and we noticed there was a blank spot there for an inventory.
That's right.
Right. So that it's a nice little segue into what we want to do next, and that's actually build an inventory.
That's right.
So for this module, basically what we're going to be taking a look at is we, of course, want to add an inventory. We're going to take a look at how to load the item sprites.
That's
so the
right.
sprites that we're actually going to be using, these sprites, I mean images, for the items that we're going to be using in our inventory.
Which is really just a refresher of last week when we did the loading of the original images and sprites and that. It's just going to be the same process.
Nice little refresher for
exactly.
people, right? Keep them going with that. We're going to do giving the player an inventory itself. So we're going to show how we're actually storing that information in the player and how we're going to actually eventually show it to the status screen.
That's right.
So that's basically the overview of what we're going to be doing in this module. So I guess the first thing we wanted to take a look at is loading the sprite items, right?
Yes.
We need the items, the images of the items in order to actually see anything. So why don't we jump in and...
You can see it there in the image in the bottom right. That would be what we're going for. This is what we're shooting for in the status screen now. We're going to be able to display some inventory items in there.
Okay, so do you want to jump in the code and we'll show how to load the sprites first?
Yep, we can start with that. Let me just get myself positioned up here. So again, last week, jumping through time, we preloaded a sprites PNG to get all the characters in here and get it running. And now we need another little image set that we can grab our items from. And we've also defined some information in our game about these items. So we've given them basic prices and descriptions and so on that we're going to use, as well as an ID value that we can use to signify what kind of item it is later on. So again, Enchant, if you were with us last week, Enchant was very easy to actually pull in the information and the data and get the image up and running that we needed. So all we have to do is, as part of our preload, we can now pass in another PNG into the array of parameters that it takes for files that it wants to preload. And it's going to take care of that for us. You'll see a little loading bar pop up at the beginning. You don't have to code any of that. It's all pre-built in Enchant, and it'll just load in each of those assets, and when they're done, it'll progress to your initial scene, and now you know all those assets are ready to roll.
Yeah, and like we were talking about last week, that's a huge plus, right? When you're being able to preload these assets, you're able to, get them into the device before, you have, like we were talking about, having like spotty internet or something like that.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
So these are types of things that help you kind of preload that, get all the content in there, and then when you need it, it's available. Right. You don't have to go through another process every time you want to pull a sprite out of a.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the idea and the purpose really behind it. And here you can see this is just our little items.png that we have. We've got a red and white chessboard, effectively, some crazy sparkly mana, ice, fire, magic, whatever you want to call this thing, and a bear claw, and something to beat or poke or flip hamburgers.
The correct name for that is the Hurter.
The Hurter. Oh, that was very creative. All right, so those images then are now going to be preloaded for us and ready to roll. And we've also gone and pre-filled in some information, again, in just a variable that we've created and added to game.
So this is basically an array of items.
Right, it's just an array of items. We can see there's the square bracket to set up the array. And then effectively this is one of our items, and then we have another one and another one and another one.
Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is good for 4 items.
Yep.
But maybe if we got into something where we had hundreds of items, this probably wouldn't be the best strategy to go about this.
Yeah, again, you don't want to have to type all that out like that anyways, and it's not really in a friendly place if it's in the code for usually the people that are going to be tweaking these values after you've got the system up and running are your level designers and your game designers and so on. They might need to balance the prices. They might need to balance abilities of these things or whatever, or change the words and that. So it again, you could use an outside data source of some kind to populate this information and read all that in.
That's what we were talking about with the map system, right? We
Right.
could do the same thing with that. You could use XML, you could use JSON, whatever you might be comfortable with, but you could create like a separate data file that would store all these items, and then you could just pull those in later on.
And being an HTML5 game, you could also blast this up to the cloud. Okay, you could put it on Azure and so on, and have it there or whatever, so that you could use a dual purpose with it. All your information for your items is up there, so you can draw them into the game when everybody's using it. But you could also display them, say, in a wiki or some kind of other companion website. Okay, showing your information on the weapons and the stats, and what other characters. You could have another companion website that shows what you have and then how it all works together and what your total statistics are for your character in your setup.
I like that idea because I'm thinking to myself, anytime I can get anything into the cloud, I'm a happy person, right? Offload all that stuff, get it up into the cloud, and yeah, that's a really good idea. I like that.
So there's lots of ways to store your items, information in a game. It could be files, and we just read them in. It could be database files, so that they're set up for really fast searching and sorting and other kinds of stuff. Or it can be on the cloud, again, where you can still search and sort them and do all that, but now it's accessible across the web for wiki displaying or whatever you wanted to put it up there for other people to play with.
Yeah, very cool. I like those ideas.
That's good. And then, so we have our items. We've preloaded our images now.
Okay.
So what was the next step that we were looking at there?
Well, so we got our images loaded, so it makes sense that we probably want to have some place to display these. So
right.
we should probably give the player an inventory, right?
That's right.
I guess we're going to probably do a simple array again.
Yeah, that's probably the first approach most people will jump to, and that's fine. So if I go down to our player and we have all his information in here, and of course, we might have seen this last week there, we had our little blank inventory
we stubbed in
array that we
our
set up.
holder array, if you will.
That's right. So that is effectively going to be the object that's going to keep track of whatever inventory the player purchases or finds or scavenges or whatever we feel necessary. So that's where we're going to put it.
So why don't we fire up the editor, or not the editor, the emulator, and actually show them the game without the items in the inventory.
Sure, just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, and then we'll go ahead and, just for debug purposes, let's give them something.
Okay. Should be able to do that unless I reset it somewhere. Let's see here. So we got our guy, and again, he can run around. That's great. And if we're not facing anybody, we pop this up. We get our status.
With a blank inventory.
And we have no inventory in there.
Well, it makes sense. We don't have any items in our inventory yet.
That's right. So on-the-fly coding, this is always fun. So we'll just throw something in there and hope for the best. I can't remember if I reinitialized it somewhere else. No, I didn't. So there we go. And he has the bear claw, or what was it called there?
I think it's
whatever
the dragon claw.
The dragon claw. That's good because a green bear would be mildly upsetting. So a dragon claw that I now have in my inventory, and this could be for quests. This could be equipment. Maybe that's actually like a glove that you can wear or something like that, and they just call it the dragon claw. It's whatever you want it to be. The inventory, can be standardized to just items that you could use. It could be non-standardized where it can just
could be quest items.
Quest items and anything else at the same time. You could have multiple inventories. A lot of games do that nowadays.
Yes, I've seen
They
that.
have the quest item inventory where none of those items are usable or accidentally throwawayable or destroyable or whatever you want because they are important to you and will block a quest if you lose them, right? So you could split this up however you want, and it's as easy as, again, just going back in here and adding another player.quest inventory, if you wish, as an array, and then putting only quest items go in there and make sure you put all your other items into your normal.
That's a good way to
inventory.
expand the inventory.
Exactly.
So you mentioned there you're like on the fly coding and you seemed a little nervous.
You never know what happens.
I got a challenge for you.
Oh, goody, here we go.
Let's break this code.
Oh, you want to break the code?
Yeah, I want to break the code because we mentioned to them last week that we were going to
Okay.
show them what would happen if you broke your code and how to debug it.
That's true.
So now I want to see you break it.
Then I forgot, so now, okay, well, the easiest way I'm going to go with is there.
Okay.
A is not going to be a valid index in our item array setup that we had,
Yeah, 'cause we're only
defining
0
all of our
through
items.
3, right?
Exactly. We could even just, okay, we'll go to 5 because he doesn't exist either.
Okay.
And we'll see what'll happen here. So, you're playing around, Okay,
Yeah.
no problems.
No problem.
Right? Now, not what you intended,
No,
right? 5 is definitely not.
the claw.
Yeah, and I, maybe you realize, wait a minute, I gave myself just one item. Why do I have 2 and things like that? So how would I?
Well, this would be a
debug-
hard problem to track down because it's not even throwing an error.
Right. There's no. It's not crashing at a certain point or whatever. So you're going to have to step through the code in this case. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we
talked about the fact that we're in Cordova, so because we're using Cordova as our platform to wrap this game in to make it cross-platform, we're not able to use all the cool features that Visual Studio has to actually debug the JavaScript code.
Exactly. So what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to jump over just into our www folder and grab our index.html, and I'm going to launch that over here, and I'm going to allow the block content. And here's our game now running just in the browser. We haven't shown this yet, so
we haven't shown them in
it's a dual example at the same time.
Very nice.
And so we still got our guy running around, and we can pop that open, and there's our bug again. And as you can see, because I don't enforce the browser size or anything like that, we clearly have a style issue that we're going to have to work out in the future and so on, and just clean it up.
And this goes back to when we were talking about when you're targeting a certain platform, there's going to be certain things that you need to do in order to make it work better on that platform. Exactly. So because we've only been developing this for mobile, we haven't been thinking about, well, what happens if someone has a 1080...
Right, a really widescreen monitor.
Yeah, with a 16 by 9 or something like that. So
here, we know we have a problem. Well, we see a couple. We got this status box going a little big, and we know these are not valid. And again, as I mentioned, F12 is sort of the magic button, I'm pretty sure, on most of the browsers to jump you right into here. And of course, if you don't have F12, you have to try to find the bars that everybody is hiding from you so that you can't do anything, right? And you would have to go into Tools, and then there it is, Developer Tools. That's what you would want to display. Okay, and every browser has it. Every major browser effectively has it. I think you can actually get to it from the little widget over here as well. So there's another way in Internet Explorer to access it. I'm a keyboard warrior, so F12 and away I go. And right away it's showing me the HTML code that we saw last week that really runs our game.
So that's our index HTML.
That's where we're starting, exactly. And you can pop through here, and we have a couple of different things. Here's our console. This is where we would print any kind of warnings or errors or something like that.
So if we threw an exception or we threw an error, it would be displayed here in the console.
That's right. Then we have our debugger, which is great, very handy. This is the guy we're actually interested in. I'm just going to make this bigger because right now we don't...
It's kind of hard to see it.
Yeah, let me blow this up big screen. There we go. And I can do this. There we go. So we got a little bit of zoom going on, and that's fine. There's nothing really fancy there. Actually, I got to switch files for a second. Sorry. And we're going to go into where we think the root of our problem is, which happens to be in the game.
Well, we only have the one file right now inside of our game.
Other than our map data. And there's our items and so on that we had earlier. And looking at that, I don't see any problems. There's Dragon Paw. Okay, there's no fifth item.
Well, their IDs are 0 to 3.
Yeah, nobody added in a bunch of extra items, so I'm not sure really what's going on and why I'm getting 2 items in his inventory or whatever. So
I guess the best place for us to look for that then would be when we're actually adding the items.
Exactly. So I would go down. I know I initialized them to something, and this one's obvious because, well, there it is. Oh, I put a wrong number in. I must have mistyped on a keyboard, or I hit the wrong number, or whatever, and I could fix that. But
show them how the breakpoint works.
You could put a breakpoint in, just like you're in Visual Studios, okay, and playing around in C++ or whatever. And now, if the code executes and hits this spot, it will pause for me and indicate, I've got to that point you were questioning and wondering about.
Oh, and then you can take a peek at your variables, see what your data looks like at that point.
Because we've already initialized the player, it's not hitting this. But the game is still running. I can click up here, and I can do stuff or whatever if I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh the game, and you can see that it hasn't even got into the game yet because
we hit our breakpoint.
It hit our breakpoint. This is when we go to set up the players. Right after we've loaded the images and that, we start to build our assets and our original objects that we're going to need. And you can hover over it, and it shows you, for example, the data that's in there, and I mean, you could drill in, and you can see in array spot 1 I have 1, and in the next array spot I've got a 5. All right, and you can do all of the sort of features that you're used to when doing C++ and Visual Studios in here. You've got your list of local variables that you can look in, and your arguments and so on.
You can see your entire call stack.
Yep, you have your call stack, so we can see that we came from game.onload, and that's where we jumped into set player to get to where our supposed problem we thought was. And of course it is there because I typed it there. So we could just remove it from
the best
there.
Type of bugs and when you put them in yourself.
Yep, and if you want to, you can continue on at any time, or you can step over and step into functions and step out of functions just like you had in Visual Studio. So if I were to hit this, step over, it's just going to go to the next thing that executes and the next thing that executes. This is a function, of course. There, so we can step right over that one as well, and just iterate through, and you can, again, at any point in time, okay, max hit points is 10, and currently the player's hit point is undefined, okay, so that's what I expected, and now hit points is 10 because it got set. And you can step through your code and look for any problems or anything that immediately jumps out at you as that's not quite right, that's not what it should have been, and then dig into it more and try to find where your problem is.
It's a really powerful debugger, it really is.
Yeah, it works really well. And again, most of the modern browsers nowadays have this on the PC so that you can debug on the PC and away you go. And when you find the problem and you have no more breakpoints, I mean, you can continue on and it's back to running. And I can hide this as if nothing happened.
The one thing I want to point out here is we're running this in the browser, and this is the exact same code that we took from our project. We didn't change anything.
Nothing's been changed here. It still just works with the D-pad there. I can also use the arrow keys. So as you can see, my mouse is not over the D-pad, and I can use my arrow keys and spacebar to pop up our broken status and so on.
That's really cool. So we have a cross-platform game right here already.
Correct.
Right. So if we wanted to release it on another platform, all we really need to do is rewrap it in Cordova's version for that platform.
Yep.
And away we go. We can just copy out that www folder. We can even put that on a website, and instantaneously you have a game up on the web.
That's right. So I mean, you want to use it as a portfolio piece, or you just want to demonstrate it for some reason, you can just get it up there and away you go.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So there's our part that we forgot to do last week that we said we would. Kept trying to remind myself, and I forgot to break something. I'm not used to trying to break things. I'm used to trying to fix things. Yes. Yeah, that's right. So that's where we're at. So we have our inventory now, and we're going to remove this item again because we don't want them to start with anything at this point.
So we've shown how to load the sprites. We've done the giving the player of inventory, and we've shown how we're showing it in the status. But did we show the code behind it?
No, we haven't looked at the code yet. So let's go look at that. So again, we have our inventory here, and my Control F was not working. So I'm just going to go quick find there. So we're going to jump through, and in our display status function that we built last week, I said ignore this magical thing down here, and that's it there. So what we're doing here is we have a show inventory function, and it's taking a single parameter. Just close that so it stops highlighting. Takes a single parameter, which is an offset value, is the way we've set up this function. So we have this code, we've written this. This is not part of Enchant. We added this to the player as a function. So I'm just going to jump over to it. And here is our show inventory function. So if the player's visible items length is equal to 0, we step into this and we begin to draw from our items PNG file, which we have, my computer jumped on me there, which we have in our assets array. Again, in case you forget from last week, game.assets is the object where we store all of the files that we used the preload command on, that once they were finished loading, they went in here, and that's how we get access to them again.
And it's set up like an array of objects. Right. That's why we're calling it like an object in an array. Right.
We just pass in the indicator of which file we want, and then it does the rest for us and gives it back to us. And we're going to draw using that to a surface that we already put in the player, again, back where we initialized the player. And what we're going to draw is however many things we have in the player's inventory. So we've set up a for loop. We're going to start at 0, and as long as I is less than the player inventory's length, we're going to step through one item at a time and add it effectively to that status display. So we need to create a new sprite, and again, that's just an image that we put somewhere on screen, an icon or a character or a tree, anything like that. And we have to specify its sprite width and sprite height. And again, everything in our game this time around is 16 by 16 or something like that. So it gets the width that we want into our sprite. We called it an item, and now we can position it. Now we have quite a few positions, and for the items, as they move along, we want them to lay out side by side horizontally.
Makes sense.
Okay, just excuse me, I got a cough. Sorry. And we're going to start at 130 pixels. That's just a position down from the top of the screen that it fits right beside that inventory word that we've set up. So we've measured that. We know where it's going. And we're just going to shift them around based on that. And the X value is going to push it to the right based on which item we're currently drawing. So on the fourth item, it'll be 4 times 70 over from the 30th pixel.
Makes sense, because every time we add one, we want to move it that much more over from
from the last item beside it. Sorry. Yeah. And this Y offset is so that we can, if we have multiple menus, such as our inventory status shows up and it's a certain size, this Y offset lets us push it farther down or up based on our standard point. And we built this with the status menu in mind. So when we pass in 0, it's in the right spot, 130. But later on, when we build a shop, we don't want to have to rewrite this code.
Oh, no.
So we're going to pass in our offset that we want to adjust from 130 up or down to fit the store layout, the store menu that we're going to have. So that's why that Y offset's there.
Makes the code a lot more reusable, yes.
We know we're going to buy these from somewhere, so we already put in the code to allow us to sort of set that up.
That goes back to pre-planning, right? We were talking about it earlier. If you know the steps that you want your game to reach, and as you're building it and you're adding like, oh, I want a store and I want a battle system and I want an inventory system, and you're sitting back and you're looking at them, you can kind of find like the intersections, right?
That's right.
I like to have this like Venn diagram in my head, and where everything kind of intersects is where I'm trying to target the code, right?
Because that's the part where you can write nice flexible code that will get you the most win. It's touching all of these systems. They all use this. So if I write this function correctly once so that it can do everything all the other systems need, I don't have to write 3 of the similarly named functions that all do something slightly different. Why waste all that time writing that code? So knowing that we were going to do that, we put a little offset in here so we can just shove the item list down or up so that it lines up in the shop menu apart from just the status menu.
I remember when I was in your class, you gave me a nice little tidbit of information. If you're rewriting the same line of code, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's usually one indicator, yes. Something's wrong there. Either your design was wrong or the way you're organizing and architecting your code is slightly off, and there's probably a better way. You could have been doing it to reuse the code. Yep.
Yeah, very cool.
So continuing on, so that gets our position of the item, and then the basically which item we want to draw. We've called it frame like it's an animation frame, but it's just being...
It's just easier to understand. If we say frame and you're thinking of it being sliced out in slices of frames, it's kind of easy for people to understand.
So it'll be the first frame, the third frame, the second frame. So it takes the value out of our inventory at that inventory slot, whatever the value for basically the ID or the position of that item, and that's going to be the frame number that we're going to use to draw the right image. And then we've scaled it up in this case to be twice the size of what the image normally is. And then...
We want to be a little bit bigger on the screen because there's a lot of real estate there. We might as well use some of it up.
That's right. So we take that surface now that we just created basically and we drew the assets into, and we're going to set that to this item's image so it knows which image to refer to. And now we push that item into our visible items array. All right. So that means that it's no longer a length of 0. It's going to have a length now. And at the very end, the last thing we do is we add that item as a child to the current scene so that it is viewable.
And just so the people that either forgot or didn't see last week's, what is the parent-child relationship? Explain that a little bit more.
The parent-child relationship, basically, it's a hierarchy standard. You'll have a main object, and it can have a series of child objects added to it, usually for grouping purposes so that when you can just talk about the one thing and all the rest come along with it. But also it can be used for things like draw order, so you can stack items in the same scene as children of that scene, and then they will draw in the right order and things like that.
Yeah, so we were talking about like you doing parallax scrolling or something where you've got one image behind another image scrolling and stuff, and this is how you kind of accomplish that, is by having that hierarchy and passing them onto a stack in a certain order, right?
Right, you could do it that way, yeah. Exactly. So that's what our little child, our add child, is doing. So it's adding each item to our current scene, and the current scene is the thing we're drawing, so we will see it displayed for us. And again, we use current scene because when we go to add the shop later, it's going to be a separate scene that's on the stack over the original stage. or scene, whichever one you want to refer
Makes
to it
sense, as opposed to just putting it directly on the root or directly on the stage itself.
Exactly. So we don't have to rewrite this function. And this show inventory can work basically again in the shop or in the
wherever we want
it to. It really doesn't matter. So we're just trying to be non-specific on purpose so that we can use this whenever required.
Okay. So my next question is: we've got it showing. We've got items in there. How do we make it disappear?
Well, that's what hide inventory is for, the function right above here.
Okay.
And basically same idea, but when hide inventory gets called, we just zip through our visible items list, okay, and we remove each one.
Okay. So if I had an item in my inventory, I decided to use it.
Right.
I would then call hide inventory and make it visible that way?
No, because that would only work if you only had that one item. Because hide inventory is actually
going to hide everything?
Right, and it doesn't actually remove it from your inventory. It removes it from the visible items array. In other words, just what we are displaying. So it's just pulling out.
We'd have to have a separate function in order to do that.
And that would directly affect the player's inventory array, not the visible items.
Well, okay.
That's what we would do.
Makes sense.
So we are, in this case, just removing the icons from the screen, and then we will also set that visible items to a fresh blank array just to fully clean it up.
So I'm guessing when we're closing our status screen or we're closing the shop screen or whatever it might be, we're going to call hide inventory.
Exactly, and when we open it, we call show inventory. So we might as well move on to that part. So down here, of course, we have, where's our game input A? So again, this can be when the player presses A. Now, last time I showed the on-touch event, because we were talking about the mobile, I might as well also show where that same functionality is, but if I'm hitting spacebar for the web browser version, which we just showed you. So on enter frame, so every single time the browser needs to be refreshed, it comes in here and moves the player if needed, and then it checks if the spacebar is pressed. And if the spacebar is pressed, we check the player's facing using what we talked about last week, and as long as the player is not facing the void, and not facing a sprite that's going to have a role, which we'll get to in a couple minutes, we then display the status. And that's the function, again, that is showing us our inventory at the very end. There's the show inventory. And then if we look at clear status, there's our hide inventory.
Okay.
So that's the last line. Again, I told you to skip over last week and pretend it's not there, some movie magic. And that's where the call is. And clear status, again, gets called whenever the player moves, because he's basically done reading the status menu we've decided. So whenever our player moves, he clears the status bar, which hides our inventory and nulls out all the messages and everything like that, and it goes away. So, and again, now that we have not a broken version of our game, we have taken out the bug that we put in there on purpose. I can move around, I can pop the inventory open, and so that's when we called show inventory, and there you can see all this data.
We removed everything from our inventory.
Right, currently he has nothing, so we see blank, but there it is again for those who might have missed last week's stuff. There's all of our status, and this is where our inventory is displayed, and then A, of course, shows it. That's not how we get rid of it, but if we move in any direction, it also clears our status, which hides our inventory items as well. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of inventory items floating in the world as you're running around. So when that status goes away, that's the indicator of when we should hide our inventory. So we don't have to go in and add more functionality anywhere for listening for special button presses. We already are listening for them because that's how we hide the status. So we should hide the inventory at that time too.
Makes sense.
And that's all we have to do. So we just add our hide inventory call here and our show inventory call there. And we now have an inventory system that's displayable, that's viewable, and that we can play around with. And there's lots of extensions that you can do to that inventory system. Like I said, we could have the quest inventory stuff. We haven't shown you yet how to use an item out of there. Okay, so right now it's just collectibles. Right, so yeah, I found everything in the game, and you could use it just that way too. If you want, it could just be a progress tracker. You know, did you find all 5 pieces of whatever you needed in your game, and now you win? And, well, how would I check through that? Well, you just set up your for loop to go through the inventory one at a time again, just like we did for showing what to show to the screen or what to remove from the visible items to make it hide. But now you go through the actual player.inventory array one at a time, and if he has all of the items you're looking for, you let him win the game if that's what you want. So you can do it already. You could effectively now go and add a win or a lose event and put a game collecting state in there where he just collects enough pieces of something and he wins, or completes a quest or whatever you want.
It really depends on what type of game you're building, right?
That's right.
To really how you're going to use this inventory system. But that's pretty cool. Like in a short period of time there, and we've managed to get the inventory system in. We're able to show it. We're able to get items into it. We're preloading the items right off the bat, so we're not having to use that overhead when we want to show an item and stuff like that. So it's structured really decent.
Again, Enchant handles all the preloading of the images, so we don't have to worry about that. And we already had some of the underpinnings of what we needed to expand our player just a little bit more and give them basically pocket space. And then we needed to show it in the status where we had it.
Very cool.
That's it.
So I'm thinking we've got this inventory, but we don't have anything in the inventory.
Anything in the inventory?
Yeah, we need to get some items into this inventory. So I got an idea. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
And then when we come back, we're going to talk how do we build an NPC store so we can go buy some stuff and fill up our inventory.
Sure, that sounds good.
All right, see you guys in 10.